Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 7th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Madam Secretary, could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Norberg.
Here.
Commissioner Kraus.
Here.
Vice Chair Bash.
Here.
Chair Keating.
Here.
Commissioner Rosenbaum.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Chapman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Director Fitzer, current events and reports.
Oh, none this time, Chair.
Thank you. This time, I'd like to open a call to the public. This will be for anything that is not on the agenda for this evening. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on anything that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, I close the call to the public. And Madam Secretary, item number 1, please.
Consideration and action to review and approve or disapprove the February 21st, 2019 Planning and Zoning minutes.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Please vote.
I'm still missing something. Two. Oh, there. Motion passes 6 in favor and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Item number 2, please.
Consideration and action on a preliminary plat for Fulton Homes Escalante in Parcel 5 on the Verdugo PAD located in the southeast corner of 163rd Avenue and Asante Boulevard.
And before we begin, Commissioner Kraus, you need to recuse yourself. Is that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself on items 2 and 3 as my company I work for is the engineer on the project.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Angulo, take it away.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this presentation is for a preliminary plat application for Parcel 5 by Fulton Homes. And the site is located within what it's been known as Verdugo. It's on the southeast corner of Asante Boulevard and 163rd Avenue. It's zoned PAD with a land use designation for medium density residential. So the property is, I think I got the acres wrong on that, I'm sorry. The property is 27 acres where the applicant proposes 146 lots for a total density of 5.36 dwelling units per acre, which is permitted by the PAD for this medium density parcel. On site, the applicant proposes 45 by 85 foot wide lots. The site's going to be accessed off of Asante Boulevard on the northeast side, and just a little bit further south on the east side off of 161st Drive. The total open space provided is about 6.4 acres. And tracks J and track B are their main amenity areas for this parcel. So here's what the applicant's proposing for their open space and landscape, all following the same theme that the parcels adjacent to it have been approved for in their platting process. And here's a close-up of those amenity tracks. So seating areas with barbecue facilities and also green space for recreation and playground equipment. And one thing to point out is that playground equipment, track J, is going to be shaded. So that's an add-on. The proposed wall plan shows a mixture of thin walls and also partially view fences for those lots that back up to those amenity areas. Something also unique in this project is that the applicant's proposing an accent wall along 163rd Avenue. And here's another rendering of what it is proposed to be. So as you're driving through 163rd Avenue, you'll be getting that mixture from the thin walls from the lots, and then a little break with this accent wall. So staff's recommendation is that the PNC Commission recommends approval of this preliminary plat to the City Council. And take any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapman.
I guess just a question whether these folks have an agreement with the school district. You know, I'm not sure if it's Dysart or Nettleburg.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, this report, or actually when they were going through their zoning process, there was outreach of the Verdugo PAD as a whole that went out to the school districts. But at that point, we didn't receive any comments from neither of the schools. The applicant is here tonight. I'm not sure if they have reached out a second time after that. So if you'd like, we could bring the applicant up and have them answer.
Well, if it's going to pertain to the whole Verdugo development, yes.
If you could please state your name for the record.
You bet. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Chris Webb with Rose Law Group here on behalf of Fulton Homes. Commissioner Chapman, to answer your question, yes, we did have a meeting with the Dysart School District in January, toward the end of January, with Kevin Shipman over there. We discussed the project, discussed some of the district's needs, and we are currently waiting to hear back from the district. So,
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
I have no other questions.
Commissioner Norberg.
Thank you, Chair. We've gone over this before, but would you mind going over the time frame of the improvements on the roads out there? Because that is always a big question and concern for the people that live there.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, so on 163rd Avenue, the west side where Asante is has already been improved. This development will improve their section of 163rd Avenue, and so Fulton Homes is also working just north of these in parcels 3 and 4. So they'll be improving north of this property as well. To the north in Desert Oasis, Pulte will be improving along with a CIP project, 163rd Avenue and the intersection of 163rd Avenue with and Jomax.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up to that question. Where will the improvements begin along 163rd? Will they begin at Pinnacle Peak or Pat Tillman Parkway there and go all the way to Jomax Road, or will there be any breaks in between with improvements?
Chair, members of the commission, adjacent to the Desert Oasis piece, there might be a couple breaks, but we're currently analyzing what we can do to make sure that there are none.
Okay, thank you. And as far as I know from experience, that road's getting quite busy, and with all those additional homes, is there any talk at this point about a stop sign or a stop light anywhere along 163rd Avenue?
Chair, members of the commission, one of the items in the CIP project that's located at Jomax and 163rd is to do a traffic signal.
But just at Jomax?
Currently. There's some other TIAs that are coming in that are showing they may be needed in the future in other locations, but at this point, the Joe Max intersection necessitates a traffic signal.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other further questions. I don't see any questions from any of the other commissioners. I would accept the motion. I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council on a preliminary plat for Fulton Homes Escalante in parcel 5 of the Verdugo PAD located in the southeast corner of 163rd Avenue and Asante Boulevard.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes 6 in favor.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Consideration and action on a zone change from residential ranch to residential low density RL5 with a PUD overlay for Saddlehorn Ranch, generally north of the Happy Valley Road alignment and east of 151st Avenue alignment.
Thank you. Go ahead. Go right ahead.
Okay, so this rezone application is for a property known as Saddlehorn Ranch. It's located east of 163rd Avenue and north of the Happy Valley Road alignment, just north of Terra Verde East. So currently, this property sits outside of city boundaries. It is within the Maricopa County. So along with this rezone application, the applicant also requested an annexation of these 20 acres through case FS 18315. So we're running these two concurrently, and if by any chance the annexation fails, there's a stipulation in the staff report and a section in the zoning document that states that this zoning would then be null. So, let's say if and when the annexation is approved, the property will take the equivalent zoning of its current zoning in the county, which is RU43, and our city zoning that's equivalent to that's residential ranch, RR, and that would be the existing zoning as is shown on the screen. And the applicant proposes to rezone those 20 acres to RL5 with a PUD overlay. And that PUD overlay is more or less to go ahead and amend some of the development standards are in our current SUDC. So one of those changes is to the front setback for front-facing garages. So it's going from the current 15 feet to 21 feet. Also, a change from the front setback to the livable space of the home or to side-loaded garages to 12 feet. And an increase in lot width for lots along the northern boundary of this project from 60 feet to 70 feet wide. The density currently allowed in RL5 districts is 5 dwelling units to the acre. But with this project, the applicant's proposing to reduce that to 3.1, staying within the allowed densities that the general plan allows for in a suburban neighborhood character area. In the zoning document, the applicant proposed, gave us a conceptual development plan that they still have to work through the engineering and the planning process, but just to give you an idea of what that could possibly look like. So one thing was that the applicant provided an open space buffer from the existing 1 acre lots to the north and to where the smaller lots would start. Another thing is, like I said, those lots along the northern side, there would be a to at least 70-foot wide lots, and they'll be limited to single-story homes. And that came out from the citizen outreach meeting that the applicant held, and working with the neighbors to the north. They thought that it would be a good buffer, and also help them keep some sort of a privacy sense. So it's an agreement that they came up with between the property owners to the north and the applicant. Another thing that they're showing here that's important is the connectivity within the trail systems. So having it connected down to the future parcel 4 in Tierra Verde East, and also to Rancho Mercado to the east, will help future residents of this project access the trail system that eventually connects to the regional trail system, as shown in the Master Parks and Trails Plan. So back in November, the applicant held their neighborhood outreach meeting. Some of the concerns that came out during the meeting were potential flooding and how this project is going to affect that or help that. The buffering from the existing acre lots that the applicant that we spoke about, and also light pollution. And through the engineering and the planning process that would follow this zone change, both staff and the applicant will work together so that the flooding is taken under control. And also our SUDC requirements for lighting will go ahead and help any light pollution issues through the design review process of those plats. So at this time, staff's recommendation is that the commission recommends approval to the mayor and city council of this zone change, subject to stipulation A, which simply states that if the annexation of the property does not get approved, then this zone change pretty much becomes null and void.
Thank you. Before I take any questions from the commissioners, this item requires a public hearing. I'll open the call to the public at this time. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Okay, thank you. Close the call to the public. And do we have any questions from the commissioners? I see none. I would accept the motion.
Move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council on a zone change from residential ranch to residential low density with a PUD overlay for Saddle Horn Ranch, generally located north of the Happy Valley Road alignment and east of the 151st Avenue alignment, subject to stipulation A as stated in staff report.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes 6 in favor.
Thank you. All right, next item, please.
Consideration and action pertaining to funding recommendations for public services for the Community Development Block Grant Program year 2019-2020.
All right, thank you. All right, before we begin, we have a couple of recusals. I'll welcome Commissioner Kraus back to his chair, and I'll start with Commissioner Norberg.
Thank you. Yes, I'm on the board of WHAM, so I will have to recuse myself. Thank you.
And I also have to recuse myself. I have had conversations with the founder of WHAM about starting a marketing and give back program, and that would benefit both myself and WHAM financially, so I need to recuse myself, and I will turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Bash.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair Bash, members of the commission. As Alicia gets set up here, I just wanted to do a quick intro. My name is Joe Gladio. I'm the Human Service and Community Vitality Manager. And before we get into this, I just want to reiterate the fact that last year when we presented this through, there was some recommendations that we took to heart and that we did modify the way that we look into this. And we will break it down to you before we show the recommendations, that we did do a tiered process that's a 65% towards the heavier weighting on the higher point total of 80 points or higher, and then the second total between 70 and 80, and then recommendations down. We had 3 people that were on this committee that helped, that were staff, that put together these recommendations. Alicia being one, she's our CDBG coordinator that oversees all of these. Deb Perry, who's our senior financial analyst, as well as Paul Bernardo, our human service and community vitality managers. They were the ones that came today. Thank you. Alicia, if you want to take it, this is also, sorry, Adam Lane is our new supervisor for the Neighborhood Services Division. He's going to assist Alicia as well. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the commission. Adam's going to help me out here with the presentation, so I'll go ahead and start. Tonight's presentation, the objective is going to be the overall process for the grants for public services, the evaluation process, as Joe mentioned, with staff recommendations, and funding discussion. A little bit of background about CDBG. CDBG is an entitlement, and because City of Surprise is eligible for this entitlement, it is an annual funding. It's a formula grant. Last year, we received $667,123,000. So that's usually what we base our recommendation or anticipated funding for the future years. That's based on the previous funding years. Of that, we are allocating 13.5% or $90,000 even. So the formula that we use based on that $90,000, as Joe mentioned, is we're going to give 65% of the funding to those applicants who scored 80 points or better. 35% of the breakdown of the funding is going to be to applicants from 70 to 80 points. And anyone who scored lower than 70 points, we did not recommend any funding. The timeline for this process is we had open application period from December 5th through January 11th. Of that, applications, we, as you previously heard at the February 7th meeting, the applicants did the presentations to the commission. And we also opened a public hearing in case there was anyone in the audience who wanted to speak to those applicants. Today, we stand before you with the public hearing and some recommendations from the commission to move forward to City Council. April 16th would be our recommendation to City Council based on what the outcome is of today's meeting. And the applications, or excuse me, our plan is due with all the funding recommendations on the 15th of May. So the goals for the public service program for CDBG, the national objective of the program is going to be to benefit a low to moderate income person. It's also going to be an area benefit, and Surprise current area area that qualifies for the CDBG funding is the Heritage District. So those of you who are aware, and also limited clientele. It's another category that would meet a national objective. Now, keep in mind, if it does not meet any of that criteria, we will not recommend funding. Adam? So, quick breakdown, as you recall from the last meeting here. The applicants that submitted to us was St. Vincent de Paul for some utility and rental assistance in the amount of $10,000. Ability 360 for the Surprise program for home accessibility applied for $31,640. New Leaf, or otherwise known as Faith House, for domestic violence case management applied for $10,000. Friends of the Southwest Valley Advocacy Center for trauma counseling services applied for $13,650. WHAM applied for $8,686 for a path to healing. Bloom 365, Bloom It Up Surprise, amount of $30,000 was their request. The Dysart Community Center applied for $19,500 for the Kids After School program. Benavia applied for $26,800 for adult and child daycare. CAS, which stands for Central Arizona Shelter Services, applied for regional homelessness assistance in the amount of $10,000 for Surprise residents. Community Legal Services for fair housing outreach in the amount of $8,253. Northwest Valley Connect, which is applied for $15,000 for the call center and Ride Connect. Lutheran Social Services applied for $50,000 for the iHelp program. City of Surprise Resource Center, the Crisis Assistance Program, applied for utility and rental assistance in the amount of $30,000. And Not My Kid applied for $4,800 for a program called Amplify. As you can see there, the request total was $268,329. So we're going to whittle that away to $90,000. Adam? So here's an applicant evaluation in reference to the awarded points, what they requested, and what staff's funding recommendation is. Now, if Vice Chair Bash would like me to read each one individually, I will do so.
I think it's quite apparent on the screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Adam, next slide, please. At this point, we will open it for questions or comments based on staff's recommendations. Any questions, comments, concerns?
This requires a public hearing as well before we entertain the council commission. I'd open it up to anybody who would like to speak on this from the audience. Seeing none. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Chapman?
I just have one question on the, under reference, under your matrix here, it says reference 10. Right below it, it shows a 5 for points, and I've noticed a number of these have 10. I was wondering if that's just a typo or...
Under the rubric?
Under the rubric, under reference.
The rubric.
It says reference 10. Well, you don't have the, I'm not sure you're in the right screen. That's the right one, but it's...
The rubric. Okay, so we provided to the commission a filled out rubric based on the applications and how we scored them. Do you have, let's take a look here.
Can I see which one?
The city
You can
staff
take
report,
mine
yeah.
if you like. Fine.
What's the question?
And it was for the letters of reference?
Yes.
The way I'm reading it, there was 10 possible points for letters of recommendation in the applications.
Yeah, when you look at the little squiggly and 5 points, I think that's what my concern is.
Oh, okay.
It's just a typo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I was just hoping so.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? At this point, you're looking for us to deliberate on the recommendations per line item?
That is correct, or if you stand with staff recommendations. Again, we use the criteria that you gave us direction on previous year. And what we did is we set aside 65% of the funding to the highest scoring applicants. Anything below a 70, we did not recommend. So it is up to the commission at this time if they'd like to deliberate on each particular application that met the criteria of 70 points or better.
Well, personally, I think that this is a much better approach than what we've had in previous years. I worked the figures my own self prior to seeing what you've done basically on the same vein and came up with essentially the same result. Now, my numbers are a little bit different than yours, but I personally have no problem with the recommended amounts that the staff has come up with. Commission, other comments?
Vice Chair Bash, members of the commission, thank you. We heard loud and clear what you told us, the direction that you gave us from the previous years, and this is where we came this year, which actually was a fair process. It was a fair process. So at this point, I'd like to ask for some action in reference to our recommendation.
No further comments from the commission. I'd entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council, approval of the funding recommendations for the public service of the community development block grant for program year 2019-2020.
Second.
All those in favor, vote please.
Just one more. I chose the two sat out, so.
Two abstained.
Oh, there it goes. Motion passes 5 in favor.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bash, members of the commission. Thank you.
Madam Secretary, if you'll read item 5.
Consideration and action pertaining to the funding priorities for the Community Development Block Grant Program Annual Action Plan for Program Year 2019-2020.
And our chair is returning.
Okay, thank you. All right, please proceed.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, our next item is the 5th year annual action plan for program year 2019. I'll try to squint. I don't have my glasses on. In regards, the topics are CDBG funding priorities, public service funding priorities, annual action plan funding recommendations. We are a direct entitlement community, as we had previously discussed in the last item. Our yearly funding through CDBG program received is $667,123 for the fiscal year 2018. We anticipate approximately the same amount of $667,123 for fiscal year 2019, and $90,000 of that allotment will be for public services as well. So basically, we're mirroring the same for next year. Our national objectives, surprise will meet. We will benefit the low and moderate income persons. We will have hit the area benefit, limited clientele, housing, and employment opportunities with the funding. The area benefit, 51% of our residents in the area must be at the low to moderate income. The activities will be targeted only for Surprise Heritage District, and the limited clientele will be youth, seniors, homeless persons, and the 51% of low and moderate income persons. Here's a breakdown of the components of how we came about this for our consolidated plan. We have our 5-year strategic plan that offers our priorities and goals. And then we have our annual action plan for fiscal year 19, which is our 1 year. This basically breaks it down as a little bit more specific for the projects and the public service grants. Our timeline is March 11, 2019 through April 11, 2019. That's our 30-day comment period. April 16, 2019, our city council presentation and approval. We'll go to them. And May 15, 2019, we'll submit to HUD. Our annual action plans for 2019 and 2020. Our projects are as follow. Public facility improvements in the amount of $200,000. Public infrastructure improvements in the amount of $50,000. Housing rehabilitation at $78,698.40. Affordable housing creation will be at $100,000. Public services will once again be at $90,000. Youth employment will be $15,000. And our program administration will be $133,424.60. That equals a grand total of the $667,123. Any questions on that? Yeah,
Before I take questions from the commissioners, this also requires public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this agenda item, on this presentation? Do we have any forms filled out, Madam Secretary?
We do not.
None? Okay, and seeing none, then I will close the public comment and take first Vice Chair Bash.
Yes, I noticed. Can you go to the back, the previous slide, please? The one immediately prior to that one. The youth employment, was that the same 15,000 that showed up in the public service from last year?
That has correct. It goes to our summer youth employment program through the city of Surprise. Correct.
Okay, what was the rationale for pulling it out of the public service, $90,000 and placing it here?
With this funding, that we actually are allowed to do that we can place that as our programs that we have in there, so that it doesn't have to go to that. So we chose to do that.
I can explain that.
Yeah, I say Adam.
So typically, because public services, we have a cap of 15%. And so, we always we got to stay under that. And in past years, this, youth services is allowable under public services. And so that's where they have funded it. But because it's a workforce development and economic development type activity that can be funded outside of the 15% cap, therefore we can fit other things under that cap. And so it's considered a direct benefit, not a public service type activity. And so that's why we took it out.
Thank you.
Is this a supplement? Do the city council also appropriate funds for this program? Or is that the sole funding?
For these activities, these are solely CDBG.
So there's only 15,000 appropriated for the youth development, or is there an additional funding from the council?
Seth will come to speak on that.
Okay.
We'll see how many people we can get standing up here. So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Smith, City Council through General Fund complements the rest of the funding. Excuse my voice.
Okay.
15,000 is a part of it. We want, and so to Commissioner Bash's point, we're trying to make more funding available for the nonprofits. That's why we wrote it directly in this year. In fact, next year, as we have a 5-year strategic plan going to be built and put together, we want to even move the City of Surprise crisis assistance funding pot into that. So then all 13.5% public services can go to nonprofits. So we can directly do what we need to do. But the majority of the SYP program is general funding.
So in the future, the city won't be competing for the funding for the nonprofits.
We were just limited to the current 5-year plan. This is our last year of the 5-year plan.
Okay.
Next year, we'll have a little more options.
Okay, thank you. I do have some other questions.
Go right ahead.
You put down on this action plan, public facility improvements, 200,000. What does that include? Do you have any proposals, or is this just generally I'm going to put money in these buckets, or do you have actual proposals of where you're going to spend this money?
There are proposals, and
Could you share those?
Yes. So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Smith, we have ideas of where we want to spend this. These are the general HUD buckets that we like to put them in. We like to say general so we can move money around. However, public facility improvements are designated for bathrooms in the brand new Gaines Youth Ball Field.
Okay.
So as you know, last year we've paid through grant funding, or we realigned our plans to pay for the ball field, parking and lights. That's all taken care of. There's existing restrooms in the original Gaines Park. It's going to be 1 block away, though, from the new park. So this money would allow us to put some new restrooms actually at the parks. We have restrooms at both places. That's an idea. The public infrastructure improvements would be for a water design study in the original town site to increase sewer capacity.
Okay.
Housing rehabilitation, that's some emergency housing rehabs like we've done
Understand that.
year after year. Public services, youth employment.
Okay.
Does that make
And just
does that
going
help?
down, I'd kind of like to hear.
Okay.
No, I'd like to hear what, like affordable housing creation, what is that? And then,
So affordable housing creation are going to be for down payment and closing cost assistance to eligible families.
Okay.
We're also looking at acquisition, rehab of distressed properties, so purchasing them and rehabbing them, again, for making them available. And again, acquisition of vacant lots or distressed properties for demolition. So again, to create affordable housing in the community. The public services, we know where hopefully those are going. And then program admin is staff salaries and project planning and things of that nature, environmental reviews.
okay. That's the questions I had.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bash.
Just one additional question on the program administration. Does that involve an additional FTE, or is that paying for existing staff to
That's
manage the program?
all existing staff.
All existing staff. Thank you.
Commissioner Rosenbaum.
I noticed that you added one thing on here. This is different from what we have here currently. It starts out at 225 for the top one, then 100,000, 103, 698, 40, 90, 15, 133, 424, 60. Evidently, what it left out was the affordable housing creation. So my guess is that you took the funds out of that, moved them to that, but we have a different. Okay.
This doesn't match your screen.
Chair and commissioners, we apologize for that. That's an oversight. Yeah, we did, change the funding, and you didn't get the most current slide. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
So we apologize.
the screen's right and this is not.
Yes,
Thank you.
Screen is correct. Yes.
Thank you. I don't see any questions from any of the commissioners. Good questions, and thank you, Commissioner Smith, for bringing that up. I had some of the same questions that Commissioner Smith did. And I do believe that will this agenda item also go to the expanded committee, Veterans, Disability, and what's the rest of it called?
Quality of life or whatever.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Though we love spending time with you, this item and all public service items will go to the brand new Veterans, Disability, and Human Service Commission. I'd like to recognize our chair of that commission is here tonight, Mr. Vanderlyn, behind us here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for attending tonight, and hopefully this has been helpful for you as to what you'll be dealing with next year at this time. Great, thank you. Seeing no other questions from the commissioners, I would accept a motion.
I move to recommend approval to the mayor and city council, approval of the funding priorities for the Community Development Block Grant Program Annual Action Plan for program year 2019-2020.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion passes 7 in favor.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. All right. Do we have any other future business or agenda items that commissioners would like to bring up? Commissioner Norberg.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out if it was possible if this commission was emailed when projects that we've approved and that have gone through the commission, and groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings come up, so that we have an option and an opportunity to attend those. It's possible to get those emailed to us.
Chair, members of the commission, I'll see what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none others, then I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
When you choose to shop and surprise, you're helping to shape your community. The money you spend here stays here. In fact, local sales tax makes up nearly 40% of the city's general fund revenues. That money is used to pay for police, fire.